Hey, welcome back to another gadget report. Let's talk gadgets. And this week we are really talking gadgets. We are talking about something that, if you are a passenger on an aircraft, you don't want to hear about it. Pilots, they take it as something normal. Um, it's something that it's quite normal and happens, I would say, in almost every flight. But it may be unpleasant, and a lot of people, especially those who have anxiety when flying, it might be a very, very, very pleasant situation, and that is turbulence. I wrote an article this week about bad weather and how bad weather can affect flights and aviation. And today I am doing this video about turbulence, which is something that occurs, as I said, in almost every flight. And for some, it can be really, really unpleasant. So stick around. Let's talk gadgets. So let's talk gadgets and let's talk turbulence. If you ever been on an aircraft, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. If you are one of those people that really don't like flying, you must be saying, oh, it's dreadful. I know it's not the most pleasant experience, I would say, even for someone who loves aviation like myself. Um, but of course, if you like aviation, if you are confident with flying, and if you like it, you take it on in a totally different way than obviously if you are there and if you're anxious and if the experience of flying per se is horrible for you. So today I'm talking about turbulence. I based this article on, this video on an article from National Geographic. I will leave the link below so you can also read the article and see all the aspects of turbulence. They talk about all the aspects. Even tell you what can you do if it happens, all of the aspects of turbulence. So it is a very comprehensive article. It's a really nice one. But today I would really like to just scratch the surface and talk a little bit about what turbulence is. So what is turbulence? So according to the article, turbulence is caused by a chaotic and capricious, sorry, eddies of wind. So what it is when there's different winds in different directions and going everywhere, and the plane just flies over it, there's this turbulence. Usually you may find pockets of air and there might be a descent. Sometimes it happens with turbulence, and what you feel, it's like the aircraft is going to fall because it descends quite rapidly, and of course then the pilot has to correct it and it just goes back to his cruise altitude, but is usually caused by turbulence. When the aircraft hits these pockets of turbulence, these pockets of, capricious air, as it say, these chaotic, capricious eddies of wind, so winds everywhere, what you feel is that the aircraft is just shaking, and it's an unpleasant situation, it's an unpleasant feeling because it looks like you're just shaking. Sometimes it may be quite strong, and a few months ago there was actually one aircraft that experienced very heavy turbulence, and it may cause things to fall and things like that. So it might be quite unpleasant depending on what's happened. Usually you cannot really predict that because it just happens, but it's something that it's quite natural. The aircraft are usually and are equipped to go through turbulence, and it's usually a quite benign occurrence. And as I said, sometimes it might be a bit more strong and may cause damage, but it's rare when that happens. It can happen, these masses of hair can happen from ground level to altitudes way above the cruising altitude. Usually when we experience it, we are already in cruise altitude, but sometimes it happens when we take off because of the tailwind of another aircraft. It is known that, for example, the A380, when the A380 takes off, the next flight needs to wait a little bit because of that tailwind that may cause that turbulence on the takeoff as well. So what causes it? According also to the article, turbulence may be caused by several things, but the common causes are mountains. When you get mountains, you get air, and then you get air eating the surface of the mountain and bouncing back, and that may cause a little bit of a whirlpool there, a little bit of a funny way of different winds, different directions that may cause that turbulence. Jet streams, just as I said, when an aircraft, for example, takes off and it leaves that jet stream, that thrust, and then if another aircraft is going to go right after it, it may experience a bit of turbulence due to that mass of air. Or in cruise altitude, if there was an aircraft that passed before, for example, you see sometimes aircraft cruising each other, and that may cause it. Even though they are far away, if one passed, they may cause some of those tailwinds that will then affect the other aircraft going on the other direction. And of course, storms. Storms are a big cause of turbulence. I spoke about that in my article this week. For example, the microbursts that are very, very dangerous weather phenomenon because they are winds that hit the ground rapidly and violently. And in that particular case, it's not just a case of air pocket and you can see if an aircraft is at cruise altitude and hits a air pocket and goes down slightly, it's still on a high altitude and it can easily go back to normal. But if an aircraft is taking off or landing and it's a microburst that actually pulls it down, it just crashes. So that's very dangerous. That's why when usually microbursts happen, airports close to takeoff and landing because of the danger of these microbursts. It happens in Sydney quite a lot. It is one of the airports that sometimes gets affected by severe thunderstorms. These microbursts usually happen with severe thunderstorms, and that's what happens. But other types of storm, even just a rainstorm, because of the winds and the masses of air that it generates by the storm, usually causes turbulence. And even though the aircraft on cruise altitude is above the clouds, it can still be affected by the turbulence generated by that storm. It obviously will be a little bit unpleasant, but it's quite benign, and you won't crash the aircraft for sure. And these are the things that can be things. Some events can be detected by radar, for example, in the case of the microbursts, in the case of the weather, it might be detected, but some obviously not. Storms are the ones that obviously can be detected by radar, but if it's just a mass of air, something like that. But usually pilots already know that if they are approaching mountains, for example, it's quite likely that it's going to be a tiny bit of turbulence. For example, I remember that on my flights, when you go from land to sea, when you cross a border, there's usually a little bit of turbulence. I remember when I used to fly from Australia to Portugal, and we used to be all those 3-4 hours flying over Australia, and then we would leave Australia through the north towards Asia, and once we hit that border, once we hit the sea, we would hit a tiny bit of turbulence. That's because of the air masses from the sea and the differences in pressure, etc. So that's also common. And it happens. So it's another thing, and pilots are quite aware that usually this happens, and they are ready for it. So it's but there's one type of turbulence. It talks about it in the article that can't be detected, and it's the CAT, C-A-T, and it's a clear air turbulence. This is usually the ones that cause issues like injuries because they cannot be predicted. So it's those erratic masses of air that may occur, and because you cannot detect them, pilots do not know about it. They only know when they are in the middle of it, and if it's really strong, there's those strong air pockets. The aircraft just, it's like a fall, it's like going in a free fall for a while, and it's how it gets scary for some people, and that's when injuries or things like that can happen. This cannot be detected, but still pilots are trained to deal with this type of turbulence, and aircraft are prepared to endure this type of turbulence. It's not an occurrence that it's likely to cause the aircraft to crash, but of course it's unpleasant for those inside it. The response, well, it's going to be fear and anxiety. I know a lot of people are anxious and fearful of flying. A lot of I already told you my story. I hated aircraft, and now I'm an aviation lover. And of course, these type of events will add to that anxiety. If you are already anxious and fearful of flying, turbulence will always add up to that. But I think the secret is try to be calm. Just know that the pilots are highly trained to deal with situations like this, and it's not likely that the aircraft is gonna crash or anything. It's just a little unpleasant. I give you that. I agree with that. It can be really unpleasant, but it's not likely that it's going to be an incident or anything like that. Even this clear air turbulence, these events are not that frequent. They're quite rare, and today every single aircraft that is put on the market, a new aircraft, are much better equipped to detect more and more and more and more things. So pilots are more and more equipped to detect things, even though these ones cannot be detected yet. But who knows? Maybe soon we can. And they are trained. They know that it might happen, and on the event of it happening, they know how to solve the problem and get out of it in safety and without any issues. The secret is always put your seatbelt on when you are seated, because if it happens, if turbulence happens, you are already prepared, and it's less likely that you're going to bounce or something if it is a very strong turbulence event. So if you follow instructions from the crew and you try to keep calm, I think it is unpleasant, but it's a quite benign thing, and it just will subside. It will pass in a few minutes, and then you will go back to your flight and you will arrive in safety, which is what most times, if not all the times, happens. So this is my input on turbulence. As I said, I'm going to leave the article because the article has a lot of things about this. It's a very comprehensive article about this. I obviously not going to read the article because then I would be just copying it. This was just my input, my experience with turbulence. I had a few episodes with mild turbulence and a little bit stronger. I never had an episode of very, very strong turbulence like a cat event. I never had that, but I had some events. I remember once after leaving Asia, after leaving Bangkok, once we hit the sea. So again, in that transition, there was a little bit of a turbulence event, and it was a little bit stronger than usual, and the aircraft was shaking quite a bit. But in a few minutes, it was over, and we proceeded our flight without any issues. So this is my experience. This is something that it is to be expected in any flight because it usually happens, but it's usually very, very mild. You just feel like when you're in a car and you hit some pothole or something, you just shake a little bit and then it's over. So for now, I hope you like this gadget report of this week. I know the subject was not something that a lot of people think it's pleasant, but I decided to talk about it because it's something that happens, and I think it's interesting to address it and talk about things and actually explain that it's not the end of the world. It's something that happens quite frequently, and we should just relax. I think the secret here is when you're flying, just relax, just try to enjoy it as much as you can, even if you don't really like flying. I think if you have a positive mindset and if you put in your head, oh, well, I have to do this, um, it's going to be all right. And if you have a positive mindset, everything will be all right because and the whole experience for you will be much more positive than if you just go there thinking it's going to be dreadful and you dread it and this and that. So I think mindset is everything in this. I strongly believe that. And not just with flying, I believe mindset is everything with everything. Because, you know, if you have a positive mindset, you face things, whatever they might be, in a much better outlook than if you just go and you just feel negative and defeated. So the same here. If you get into that aircraft with a positive mindset and a positive attitude, I'm going to go through this. I don't really like flying, but doesn't matter. I'm going to face it. I'm going to embrace it, and it's going to be okay. Even if you encounter a little bit of turbulence, which is likely that you will, because there's always a tiny, tiny little bit of turbulence, you will face it with a smile on your face and much more calmer than if you are just thinking about it and thinking how dreadful it is and this and that, because that will actually aggravate your state of mind and obviously your anxiety levels. So, but tell me your experience. Have you ever been in such a bad turbulence that it was out of control? For example, a cat event. Have you ever been in one? Tell us your story. Or what's your reaction? How do you face turbulence? Are you a pilot? What do you do? Tell us the secrets. We just want to know the secrets of aviation. Let me know your experience. Let me know what you think about turbulence. Let me know what is your mindset when you fly, and what do you do when there's turbulence. And of course, you know, put a like on the video and subscribe the channel so you get a notification of a new gadget report every week. Before I go, I would like to thank you all for watching and see you next week. Have a good one and let's talk gadgets. See you. Bye.